Kansas nearly goes down early in the Big 12 tournament for the second year in a row. Plus, a blue blood is finally on the right side of the bubble in a chaotic day of conference tournament college hoops.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoops show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Andy Patton. You're joining at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. I want to thank all of you for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day, and remind you all that you can check out the show ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to those everyday listeners and those of you who've been hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord channel. Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by TurboTax. If you're ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed, then head over to TurboTax today to get matched with your expert. Well, 3 tickets punched on Wednesday at the Southland Conference. McNeese is your winner there. No surprise. They dominated the regular season. They are your winner coming out of that conference. They beat Lamar, the 2 seed, 63-54. The Patriot League, number 2 seed American, wins over number 5 seeded Navy, 74-52, after Navy's leading scorer Jordan Pennick was ejected very early in the game. And then recording this before the end of the Big Sky Conference Championship, Montana, the 2 seed, taking on Northern Colorado, the 1 seed right now. Montana is up 12 early in the second half. I'll get to an update at the end of the show. But for today, we're just going through the major conferences. We're going to talk SEC and Big 12 in the first segment. We'll talk ACC and Big 10 in the second segment. We'll close out the show at the Big East as well as the Mountain West and the A10. We're going to talk about all of the results for today and what matchups it's set up for Thursday. And then we're going to also talk about some of the bubbly results, what that means for those teams hoping to hear their name called on Selection Sunday. We'll start in the Big 12, where we almost got what would have been a major upset. Kansas survives a scare against the 14 seed Central Florida Knights. Kansas, the 6 seed in this game, win 98-94 in overtime. Jordan Ivy Curry for Central Florida hit a 3-pointer to send this thing into overtime. It was an ugly game from that point forward. Lots of turnovers, lots of mistakes. Just didn't feel like either team was playing all that great in the closing minutes of this game, but Kansas found a way to get it done. Hunter Dickinson, 23 points for him, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, a pair of steals. He also knocked down 3 of his 4 threes, including a clutch one in overtime and a clutch one down the stretch in the regulation as well. Zeke Mayo led all scorers with 20, or led Kansas with 24, as well as 8 boards. He shot 5 of 7 from 3. Nice game from the Jayhawks from the perimeter, 12 of 27 from 3, about 44%. They also out-rebounded the Knights, but the reason this game was close was because they had 16 turnovers, just some sloppy play once again from Kansas. We'll get into their matchups here in a second, but they're going to have to clean things up because they're taking on Arizona next. Elsewhere in the Big 12, Iowa State defeated Cincinnati. That was the first game of the day, the 5 seed Iowa State Cyclones playing this 13 seed Cincinnati. 76-56, the final there. Closer in the first half, but the Cyclones pulled away in the second half. Nice game from Joshua Jefferson, 19 and 8. The big story for them in this game was the injury to Tamin Lipsey. As I'm recording this, no update on how available he will be for that game against the 4-seeded BYU. As for Cincinnati, they were on the next 4 out list, needed to win this game and probably needed to win at least one more to really realistically be back in the bubble conversation. They did not, so you can cross them off the list of teams who are in the conversation to make the big dance. Number 16 seed Colorado, the first 16 seed in Big 12 tournament history, already has a couple of wins. They beat TCU a few days ago. Now they've upset the 8 seed West Virginia. 67-60 is the final score in this one. West Virginia had a 9-point lead with a little under 10 minutes to go, and then not an exaggeration, they turned the ball over 7 consecutive possessions. Colorado took advantage, as any team would, took themselves a lead and managed to hold on to it, even when West Virginia went on a little run to get this thing back within a possession. Javon Small, 23 points and 5 assists for him. The Mountaineers were a 9 seed, by most of the bracketologists coming into this game. They're probably not going to fall all the way out on the bubble, but this is a really bad result for West Virginia. Obviously, been dealing with some injuries, stumbling a bit down the stretch. I think the quality of the resume is still there for Darian DeVries' team, but this was an ugly, ugly one. Colorado, meanwhile, gets to take on Houston next. And then you got the Baylor Bears, 7-seeded Bears, cruising past number 10 seed Kansas State, 70-56 was the final in this one. Wasn't even really that close, honestly. A really nice game from Baylor. Norchad Omier became the all-time leader in double-doubles in a college basketball career at the Division I level, past Armando Bacot and Tim Duncan with 12 points and 14 rebounds in this one. VJ Edgecombe put himself, for a lot of people who are NBA draft people who just tune into college basketball at the end of the year, hope you got a chance to check this one out. VJ Edgecombe was awesome. 19 points, 10 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals, 6 of 10 from the field on 2-pointers. He was only 1 of 5 from 3, but really nice win here for Baylor. They were already on the correct side of the bubble. This probably takes them out of the bubble conversation entirely and cements them in the field of 68. They got Houston next, they got Texas Tech next. Even if they lose that game, unless they get really blown out, I think you're feeling pretty comfortable now if you're Scott Drew and the Bears. Again, we already touched on the matchups. Iowa State versus BYU, 5 versus 4, 12:30 on ESPN2, FanDuel. We don't have a line on that one yet. Apologies. Number 16, Colorado versus number 1, Houston, 3 p.m. on ESPN+. Number 7, Baylor versus number 2, Texas Tech, 7 p.m. on ESPN+. And then number 6, Kansas versus number 3, Arizona, 9:30. Also on ESPN+. Moving over to the SEC, number 9, Arkansas. This was a crazy game, folks. They survive a scare from number 16, South Carolina. They won this thing 72-68. It seemed like it was in the bag. Arkansas was up 17 at halftime in this game. Noah Dufiero, he's been out for a while now. This is his 5th straight game missed, but Arkansas didn't look like they were having any problems without Thiero, without Boogie Fland. 17-point lead at halftime. 47 points was the most scored by Arkansas in a half all season long. They had an 11-0 run to close the half. Jonas Adu had 14 points and 8 rebounds at halftime. And then the Hogs just kept letting South Carolina hang around and letting them creep back into it. And then they went on a 22-4 run over an 11-minute stretch because Arkansas didn't score a single point for 7.5 minutes. They were at 61 points from about the 10-minute mark until about the 3-minute mark in the second half. Despite that, the Hogs do find a way to survive. Trevin Brazil, 16.7 boards, 4 steals. Adu finished with 14 and 11. This is a huge win for Arkansas's NCAA tournament hopes. I realize South Carolina is not a great team, and they were expected to win, but a loss here would have been catastrophic for Arkansas. They avoid the loss. Now they get Ole Miss on Thursday. Opportunity to pick up a marquee win and really put yourself more firmly in the field of 68. Speaking of really good bubble wins for SEC teams, Texas, 13-seeded Longhorns, upset number 12 seed Vanderbilt, 79-72. We say upset. Those two teams are right next to each other, but still, Vanderbilt wasn't considered on the bubble, and they probably still aren't, even after losing this game. Texas, they needed it. They needed it, and they went out and they got it. Trey Johnson, 19 points for him, 6 of 19 shooting. Tremont Mark, 18 points, 2 assists, 5 of 8 from the field, including 9 of 11 from the free throw line. Elsewhere in the SEC, number 10, Mississippi State, cruised past number 15, LSU, 91-62. LSU ends the season 3-15 in the SEC. Rough stuff from them. Meanwhile, Oklahoma, also on the bubble, also gets a win. 14-seeded Sooners get a win over 11-seeded Georgia. Both Oklahoma and Texas, the two newcomers in the SEC, picking up wins over higher-seeded teams when they desperately needed them. This is a battle of freshmen. Jeremiah Fears, 29.6 boards, 3 steals, and 2 assists for Oklahoma. He was 8 of 16 from the field, including 4 of 7 from 3. Meanwhile, Asa Newell, tremendous game for him. For Georgia, 21 points, 17 rebounds, including 8 offensive boards. He was 9 of 16 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3 as well. Georgia wasn't on the bubble, but you'd like to get a W here. Meanwhile, Oklahoma, really good win for them. Looking forward in the SEC today on Thursday, number 9 Arkansas versus number 8 Ole Miss, 1 p.m. Eastern time on the SEC network. Number 13 Texas versus number 5 Texas A&M, 3:30. On the SEC network. These two teams split the regular season. A win here puts Texas in the field. You win this game, you're in the field. This is a huge game for Rodney Terry and the Longhorns. Fun to have it be against a team in Texas A&M. Then you got number 10, Mississippi State versus number 7, Missouri, 7 Eastern time on the SEC network. They only played each other once in the regular season. Missouri won that game by 27 points on the road on February 1st. Mississippi State, no doubt looking for a little revenge after getting stomped last time these two teams played. And then number 14, Oklahoma, taking on Mark Pope, and number 6, Kentucky, 9:30 on the SEC network. Kentucky beat Oklahoma by 1 back on February 26th. This is a huge chance for Oklahoma. Like we said, if Texas beats Texas A&M, they're in. If Oklahoma beats Kentucky here, I think they're in. There's a big, big opportunity for both these two teams against good but susceptible SEC teams in Kentucky and Texas A&M. Very excited to see how those two matchups play out on Thursday. Well, folks, North Carolina, they're on the right side of the bubble. They've been just outside the bubble picture for so long, but they get themselves a big win over Notre Dame, coupled with a loss from Ohio State. We're going to talk about both those results coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. My wife and I always want to make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to finances. And thankfully with Monarch Money, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Folks, if you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every single week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning, and without sacrificing taste, these meals are packed with flavor. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast, and we're still talking about Wednesday's results across the power conferences and what it means for the games coming up here on Thursday. We'll move now, after talking SEC and Big 12 in the first segment. We'll talk ACC here. The biggest result in the ACC, hands down, number 5 seed North Carolina, taking care of number 12 seed Notre Dame. We're not surprised by that. We're not surprised even that they won by 20. This North Carolina team has been playing better as of late. Even in the loss to Duke, we saw the flashes of this capability that this North Carolina team has. And they have, earlier in the year, they were letting teams like Notre Dame hang around. And lately they've been kind of taking those teams and making sure that they beat them quite handily. And that's what they did here. 20-point win, 76-56. Jalen Withers, phenomenal game from him. 21 points, 9 boards, pair of blocks. He was 7 of 10 from 3. All of his points coming from the perimeter. Van Allen Lubin, 17 points, 10 boards, a pair of blocks on 8 of 13 shooting as well. Wasn't just the bigs getting it done for the Tar Heels. They shot 13 of 28 from 3, about 46%. Meanwhile, Notre Dame, really poor offensive night. Shout out Carolina's defense. They shot 32% from the field, 6 of 20 from 3. Much needed one here from North Carolina. Sets up a matchup with Wake Forest on Thursday. And again, with Ohio State's loss, North Carolina, Joe Lunardi, he moved them onto the correct side of the bubble. They are now officially in the field, according to Lunardi's latest bracketology projections, with a chance to make that even more official in that game against Wake Forest. Elsewhere, nothing too crazy in the ACC outside of that. All the teams that were expected to win won. 8-seed Georgia Tech defeats 9-seed Virginia by 6. Duncan Powell, 21 points for him. The only major thing that came out of this game was after the game, Virginia announced that Ron Sanchez will not be retained. He was the interim coach who replaced Tony Bennett before the start of the season when Bennett's surprise retirement happened. Kind of in part, timing-wise, in order to keep the roster together and give Ron Sanchez a chance. Did not work out for Virginia. They're going to move on and look for a new head coach this offseason. Number 7, Stanford wins over number 15, Cal, 78-73. The final here, the funniest part about this game, Stanford, Cal playing each other in Charlotte. Just the weirdness of conference realignment fully encapsulated in that one specific example of two teams from the Bay Area playing each other literally across the country. Just a ridiculous thing that's happening. Andrei Stojakovic, former Stanford guard, now playing for Cal, hit a 3 to make this 74-73 with 14 seconds left, but then Cal didn't get back on defense. Stanford got a run out, scored, and then Cal got called for a moving screen, and that was that. And then the final game in the ACC, number 6 seed SMU defeats number 14 seed Syracuse 75-53 or 73-53. Another just brutal year for Red Autry and Syracuse. Just really, really rough stuff for this once very, very proud basketball program. Meanwhile, SMU, they've kind of already fallen off the bubble, but you keep winning the ACC tournament, maybe you can make some noise. Looking at the matchups, 8 Georgia Tech taking on number 1 Duke at noon Eastern time on ESPN. FanDuel favors Duke by 22.5 in that one. Number 5 North Carolina versus number 4 Wake Forest, 2:30 Eastern time. FanDuel favoring the Tar Heels by 5.5 in that one. That's a double bubble game too, so very much worth keeping an eye on for fans of teams on the bubble to see how that one plays out. Number 7 Stanford versus number 2 Louisville, 7 Eastern time. FanDuel favoring the Cardinals by 10.5. And then number 6, SMU versus number 3, Clemson, 9:30 Eastern time. FanDuel favoring Clemson by 7.5. Clemson beat SMU last time out by 10, so looking to do the same thing again here. Moving on to the Big Ten, the best result or the most notable result out of the Big Ten, it was all the seeds outside the top 10 that were playing each other here. Number 15 seed Iowa, the Hawkeyes beat number 10 seed Ohio State 77-70. That's a bubble loss for the Buckeyes. This is catastrophic for Ohio State. This is a team that needed to make to carry some momentum through the Big Ten tournament. They didn't need to win the whole thing. They weren't in that dire straits, but they couldn't lose to Iowa. This was probably the only thing they definitively 100% could not do, and they did it. Despite a great effort from Bruce Thornton, 24 points, 9 assists. The front court additions for Ohio State, we've talked about them a handful of times this year. The young sophomore standouts, Aaron Bradshaw, Sean Stewart, this kind of perceived, hey, the upside is sky high with this potential front court. It never panned out. And in their final game, maybe not final game, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. They may still make the field, or they may end up in another tournament. But these two guys combined for 2 points in this game. 1 of 6 from the field, 0 of 4 from the free throw line combined. Just brutal stuff from those two guys. Meanwhile, Ohio State finds themselves on the wrong side of the bubble, while Iowa gets a matchup against Illinois. Northwestern, 13 seed, takes down number 12 seed Minnesota, 72-64. Nick Martinelli, 28 points. Dawson Garcia had 22 points, 7 boards, and 3 assists for the Golden Gophers. Another note here, after the game, Chris Collins, the head coach for Northwestern, had some very strong quotes saying that he believes the Big Ten is kind of out to get Northwestern because they stayed in a hotel in Indianapolis that did not have air conditioning. The rooms were reportedly 85 plus degrees, according to The Athletic. That's definitely a story we're going to come back to when we have a little bit more time, because that's a pretty intense claim to make for Chris Collins and Northwestern. And then we had USC, the 14th seeded Trojans, beating the number 11 seeded Scarlet Knights of Rutgers, double overtime, but USC ended up winning by 8, 97-89. That ends the seasons for star freshmen Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. Yet another group of freshmen or superstar top 5 caliber pick freshmen who are not going to go dancing in the NCAA tournament. Dylan Harper, 27 points, 8 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Just the kind of phenomenal performance we've come to expect from him in a Rutgers uniform. Ace Bailey, 17 points, 7 boards, 3 steals, 2 assists, 7 of 13 from the field. But for USC, Desmond Clodd, 28 points, 8 assists on 8 of 13 shooting. And Wesley Yates continued his torrid outside shooting, perfect 4 of 4 from the three, 7 of 10 overall, 24 points for Eric Musselman and USC. Thursday, we got number 8 Oregon versus number 9 Indiana, 12 Eastern time, Big Ten Network, FanDuel favoring the Ducks by 1.5. Again, Indiana very much on the bubble, so this is a game to watch if you are a fan of a team on the bubble. Then you got 13 Northwestern versus number 5 Wisconsin, 2:30 on the Big Ten Network. Badgers favored by 7.5 in that one. Iowa versus Illinois, the 7-seeded Illini, 6:30 on the Big Ten Network. FanDuel favoring Brad Underwood's club by 10.5. And then 14-seeded USC gets a chance to take on number 6 seed Purdue, 9 p.m. Eastern time on the Big Ten Network. FanDuel favoring Matt Painter and the Boilermakers by 9.5 in that one. Well, folks, Villanova set up a rematch with UConn in the Big East tournament. That could be some fun basketball to watch in that conference, plus some bubbly action in the Mountain West, some more fun results to get to in the Atlantic 10, all coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast. We got 3 more conferences to get through, the Big East, as well as the Mountain West and the Atlantic 10 Conference. We'll start in the Big East. 3 games that took place on Wednesday. Number 6, Villanova defeating the last-seeded Seton Hall Pirates, 67-55. Ends an incredibly disappointing season for Shaheen Holloway and Seton Hall. They finished 2-18 in the Big East. Meanwhile, for Villanova, Eric Dixon, not an efficient shooting night for him, but he still finished with 19 points. Wooga Poplar had a double-double, 13 points, 10 boards, 2 of 3 from 3. Villanova wasn't on the bubble. Kind of like SMU, they had kind of fallen out of the bubble conversation. But hey, you keep winning games in your conference tournament, you never know. You may get back on the bubble, or you may just win an automatic bid. Be a bid thief. That could happen with Villanova. They got a chance starting again on Thursday against UConn. Number 10, DePaul beats number 7, Georgetown, 71-67. An upset here for the Blue Demons. Really disappointing end of the season for Ed Cooley and the Hoyas. They did not have their star freshman, Thomas Sorber, who's been out with an injury. Micah Peavy did everything he could to keep this team in at 26 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, and a pair of steals. But shout out to DePaul, 4-16 in the Big East. It wasn't a great season for Chris Holtman taking over for this program. They were in dire straits, and now they've won a conference tournament game. That's a pretty good result here for this Blue Demons team. Layden Blocker, 16 points, 6 assists. He was 4 of 6 from 3 in this one. And then number 9, Butler beat number 8, Providence, 75-69, 25 points, 7 boards for Pierre Brooks. Disappointing season for Kim English and the Friars. They had high expectations and failed to meet them. Finished 12-20 overall, 6-14 in the Big East. Butler now gets a chance to take on the number 1 seed St. John's, 12 Eastern time, Peacock. FanDuel favoring the Johnnies by 12.5 in that one. St. John's beat Butler both times in the regular season, although only by 8 and 6. We also got Marquette versus Xavier on Thursday. 5-seeded Marquette, 4-seed Xavier, 2:30 on Peacock. FanDuel favoring Marquette by 2.5. They split the regular season. Both teams won on the road. Both teams won by 2. This is going to be a really fun basketball game. Xavier is firmly on the bubble. Marquette, of course, more safely in the field. For Xavier, this is a monster game. You win this one, you're probably on the correct side of the bubble, and you probably stay there, depending what happens. Maybe not even depending what happens after this. You win this one, you don't get blown out in your next game, you're probably in a pretty good spot in terms of getting into the field on Selection Sunday. Number 10, DePaul now takes on number 2, Creighton, 7 o'clock on FS1. FanDuel favoring Creighton by 11.5. They swept them in the regular season, won by 24 and by 10. And then, of course, the big one, number 6, Villanova versus number 3, UConn. 9:30 p.m. Eastern time on FS1. FanDuel favoring Danny Hurley and the Huskies by 4.5. Teams split in the regular season. Both games were very close. I'm very excited to see how this one shakes out. Eric Dixon versus UConn should be a lot of fun. Moving on to the Mountain West and the A10 to close out the show, we'll start with the Mountain West. Number 8, San Jose State beat number 9, Wyoming 66-61. Donovan Yap had 19 points for the Spartans. Number 7, Nevada cruised past number 10, Fresno State 86-71. Nevada's kind of, they did this last year too. They didn't quite put together a resume worthy of at-large consideration. They're not on the bubble. They do not deserve to be on the bubble, but they like to play spoiler. And they're pretty good at that. Obviously, Fresno State was not a team that needed to be spoiled. They beat them by 15, and that's almost not even that good of a margin against a very bad Fresno State team. Kobe Sanders nearly had a triple-double for Nevada, 17 points, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds. But now Nevada gets a chance against Colorado State, can really be a bit of a spoiler here, not just for the Rams at-large hopes, but also to potentially keep advancing and really spoil the party for somebody else by stealing a bit here. We'll see if Nevada can keep it up. And then we had number 6, UNLV versus number 11, Air Force. UNLV wins this one by 9. Air Force season ends another really rough year for them. 1-19 in the Mountain West, 4-28 overall. Meanwhile, UNLV's Jalen Hill, 18 points, 10 boards, 7 assists, and a pair of steals. It sets up these matchups on Thursday. Number 8, San Jose State versus number 1, New Mexico, 3 p.m. Eastern time on the CBS Sports Network. FanDuel favoring New Mexico by 14.5. They actually split the regular season, and New Mexico only won by 6, and San Jose State won their game by 1. One of just 3 losses in the regular season for New Mexico, so keep an eye here. New Mexico's the better team. They're favored pretty handily, but this is the team that tripped them up once before, so it's worth keeping an eye on there. And then we got number 5 seed Boise State versus number 4 seed San Diego State. This is a fantastic bubble game. Very similar to the ACC, where you got 5 Wake Forest versus you have 4 Wake Forest versus 5 North Carolina. Here you got 4 San Diego State versus 5 Boise State. All 4 of them are bubble teams. This game at 5:30 on the CBS Sports Network. FanDuel favoring Boise State by 1.5. San Diego State did sweep the Broncos in the regular season. So they're looking to try to get their 3rd straight win over the Broncos. We'll see if Leon Rice's team can get themselves a W here. They're the one with their backs up against the wall. A loss here for San Diego State is bad, and it puts them where they're going to be pretty sweaty on Selection Sunday. But I think they'll still make it. If Boise State loses this game, they're done. It's not even a debate. They're done. They're out. But if Boise State wins this game, they're probably in. There's still, you win this game, you beat New Mexico, you're definitely in. You win this game, you lose a close game to New Mexico, you're probably still going to be in the field. So this is a huge game for Boise State. For San Diego State, it's more of a we cannot afford to lose this game type, or we need to beat this team because we don't want to put them in the bubble conversation against us type situation. Then we got number 7, Nevada versus number 2, Colorado State. Like we said, 9 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. FanDuel favoring Colorado State by 4.5. The Rams swept Nevada in the regular season, and Colorado State's their backs up against the wall. They're on the wrong side of the bubble. They need this one. The seeding worked out odd in the Mountain West, where the 1 seed New Mexico safely in the field, the 3 seed Utah State safely in the field, the 4 seed San Diego State safely in the field, the 5 seed Boise State on the bubble. This 2 seed, however, Colorado State, is considered like the farthest out of the field because of a weak non-conference schedule. But for the Rams, it's a good opportunity to get a win here against Nevada and really continue to put yourself in a position where it makes it a lot harder for the committee to say no to you on Selection Sunday. And then we got number 6 seed UNLV taking on number 3 seeded Utah State, 11:30 p.m. Eastern time on the CBS Sports Network. All these games on the CBS Sports Network. If you want to watch Mountain West hoops, just fire it up during the day and you can watch it all day long. FanDuel favoring the Aggies here by 6.5. These 2 teams split the regular season. Each team won at home. The games were by 3 and by 5. So I am expecting this to be a fun game. Really a fun slate all across the board in the Mountain West. Closing out the show, talking Atlantic 10 basketball. We had number 12 seed Davidson defeating number 13 seeded Richmond, 69-65. Richmond forced a turnover in the closing seconds, but they just were not able to capitalize. Reed Bailey for Davidson, 25 points on 10 of 19 shooting. Then we had 15 seeded Fordham upsetting 10 seeded Rhode Island, 88-71. Disappointing season, disappointing end to the season, I guess I should say, for Archie Miller, of course, former Indiana coach, brother of Sean Miller, who's been the coach at Rhode Island. They had high expectations. They finished 18-13 overall, but only 7-11 in the A10. A team that a lot of people thought, hey, they have the talent, they have the coaching acumen to potentially go on a little bit of a run in the A10, maybe even be a bid thief. Instead, they get upset in their first round game. And here's the deal. this team, Rhode Island, played Fordham 4 days ago. 4 days ago, and they beat them by 19. So you beat a team by 19, and then 4 days later you play them again and you get beat by 17. That is a brutal, brutal way for the season to end for Rhode Island. And then last but not least, number 14, LaSalle upsets number 11, UMass, 78-71. Fran Dunphy getting himself a W. His career is not over yet as LaSalle moves on and they get to take on St. Joe's. How fun is that? Fran Dunphy, a legend in Philadelphia, gets to take on one of the big five schools in the 6-seeded St. Joe's. Very excited to see how that one shakes out. As right now, 14-seed LaSalle, 6-seed St. Joe's. This game, 7:30 Eastern time on USA Network. FanDuel does favor St. Joe's by 11.5. Be fun to see if Fran can get some magic against a Philadelphia school. The other games here taking place on Thursday in the A10. Number 9, Duquesne, taking on number 8, St. Bonaventure, 11:30 on USA. FanDuel favoring the Bonnies by 1.5. Number 12, Davidson versus number 5, St. Louis, 2 o'clock on USA. FanDuel favoring SLU by 3.5 points. And then 15, Fordham versus number 7, George Washington. 5 p.m. on the USA Network. FanDuel favoring George Washington by 6.5. All right, folks, I was hoping we would have the final result for this Montana-Northern Colorado game. There's about 5 minutes left as I'm recording this now. Montana is up 4. We'll get a chance to give you an update about who's punching their ticket in the Big Sky on Friday's show. But for now, that is going to wrap it up for me here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Again, join the Locked On College Basketball Discord channel if you have not done so yet. Also, find us on YouTube if you haven't. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell. It'll tell you every time there's a new show. We're releasing specific content out there on YouTube as well, so definitely check it out if you have not done so yet. Again, Isaac and Ali back with you all on Friday morning. We got some fun stuff planned for you, that show, as well as getting into next week, so stay tuned. Thanks again for listening, folks, and as always, peace out.